Anna had never been to a place like this before. The billionaire's estate sat at the edge of the ocean, its sleek glass walls reflecting the moonlight, its infinity pool glowing like a jewel under the night sky. She stood nervously at the edge of the gathering, clutching a borrowed dress too tight at the waist, watching her classmates laugh and drink under the string lights. She had come only because her roommate had begged her. "Just one night. Anna, please, it will be fun." Fun was the last word she would have chosen to describe standing among strangers who wore confidence like a second skin while she tried to disappear into the background. Anna was 22, a senior in college, balancing 2 part-time jobs and a heavy course load. Her life was a string of responsibilities tied together with careful routine. Parties were not part of her world, dares and drinking games even less so. But tonight something inside her had cracked a little. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe it was the feeling of watching her youth slip by unnoticed. Maybe it was the tiny voice in her head whispering that she had been invisible for too long. The dare had started innocently enough. Her friends had surrounded her near the pool bar, teasing, laughing, pushing another shot of something fruity and strong into her hand. "Anna, you never do anything wild, come on just once." She had tried to shake them off, but the circle closed tighter. The dares escalated, and before she knew it, the words were out. Swim naked, just 1 lap around the pool. Prove you can do something spontaneous for once. Her heart pounded as she stared at the water, shimmering like molten silver. She knew she should say no, knew she should walk away, but her skin prickled under their expectant gazes, and a strange mix of fear and defiance welled up in her chest. "Fine 1 lap." Her voice had sounded steadier than she felt. She slipped away from the group, shedding the borrowed dress behind a cluster of bushes near the pool's edge. The water was cold against her bare skin, sending a shock through her nerves, but she forced herself forward, pushing off into the gentle waves. She swam quickly, heart racing, feeling both exposed and strangely free under the moonlight. The world narrowed to the sound of her own breath, the ripple of water, the rush of adrenaline. She made it to the far end of the pool, turned, and began to swim back. Almost done, almost done. And that was when she saw him. At first, she thought she had imagined the figure standing at the edge of the pool, the tall silhouette half hidden in shadow. But as she drew closer, her breath caught. A man stood there motionless, watching her. His features sharpened as she neared, chiseled jaw, piercing eyes, the faintest crease between his brows. He was not one of the college crowd, not part of the drunken laughter. No, this man radiated authority and cool control. Anna's mind stumbled over itself. Who was he? Why was he here? And then a terrible realization settled over her like a weight. She was naked, in his pool. She reached the edge of the pool, clinging to the cool stone, trying desperately to shield herself, but there was no cover, no towel, no escape. Her friends were nowhere in sight. The man crouched slightly, extending a hand, a dry towel draped casually over his arm. His voice when he spoke was low, smooth, almost amused. "You should be careful whose pool you trespass in." Anna's cheeks burned as she struggled to find words. I did not mean I lost a bet." He raised an eyebrow, his eyes glinting under the lights. That much I gathered. His gaze held hers longer than was polite, longer than was comfortable, and yet, strangely, it was not cruel, not mocking, just watchful, as if he was trying to decide what exactly she was. In that breathless moment, Anna felt the world tilt slightly, the night thick with unspoken tension. She did not know then that this man, Damien Carrington, was about to change everything she thought she knew about love, about trust, about herself. Anna lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of the small guest room someone had directed her to after the incident by the pool, replaying every second in her mind. She had wanted to disappear, to vanish from that glittering world where she did not belong, but instead, someone from the staff had quietly led her away from the crowd, wrapped her in a soft robe, and told her she could rest here. She should have left, she knew that, but somehow her legs had not cooperated. And now in the dark she could not stop thinking about the man with the sharp eyes and the even sharper presence. Damian Carrington, billionaire tech investor known for turning crumbling companies into gold overnight, known for keeping out of the media, known for a cold heart and a brilliant mind. Anna only knew his name because it was on the invitation her roommate had waved around in triumph a week ago, the golden ticket to the party of the season. She never expected to meet him, let alone stand dripping wet and shivering under his gaze. She shivered again, just remembering the intensity of it. Anna's world was nothing like this. She had grown up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the daughter of a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Her teenage years were a blur of part-time shifts and study groups and quiet nights dreaming of a future where she could finally breathe. She came to college on scholarships and grit, majoring in English literature with the vague hope of becoming a teacher or maybe a writer if she was brave enough. But bravery was not her strong suit. She knew her limits. She had always been the quiet one, the careful one, the invisible one. She thought about her life compared to his. Damian's name was synonymous with luxury, with power, with a kind of magnetic coldness that drew people in, even as it pushed them away. He was 35 and already a legend in business circles. Rumor had it he lived alone by choice, that no woman had ever lasted long by his side, too demanding, too focused, too closed off. And yet something about the way he had looked at her by the pool did not match the stories. There had been curiosity, there, yes, but also something softer, something that puzzled even him. The next morning, when Anna tried to slip away unnoticed, she was intercepted by one of the staff who politely informed her that Mr. Carrington requested to see her before she left. Her stomach twisted into knots, but refusing did not feel like an option. She followed the woman through wide, sunlit halls to a private terrace where Damian stood with his back to her, coffee cup in hand, gazing out at the endless blue of the ocean. "You swim well," he said without turning. Anna's face flamed. I am sorry about last night. I never meant to." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "I am not here for an apology." His voice was calm, detached, but when he turned she saw the faintest flicker of something behind his eyes. "I want to know why you were here." She blinked. "My friend got an invitation. She wanted to come. I tagged along." His gaze sharpened. "And why did you take the dare?" Anna hesitated. She could have made a joke or brushed it off, but something about the way he looked at her demanded honesty. "I guess I wanted to feel like I was part of something just once, like I was not the boring one, the careful one." Damian studied her silently. Then he gave the smallest nod, as if that answered a question he had been asking himself. Their conversation was brief, but it lingered with Anna long after she left the estate. She told herself it was just a strange moment in a strange night, that she would never see him again, that their worlds were too far apart for any real connection. But life had a way of ignoring such logic. A week later, she received a message. An invitation. Dinner. Just the 2 of them. Anna stared at the message for hours before answering. She told herself she was curious, that she wanted to see if the man behind the legend was as cold as they said, or if the flicker she'd glimpsed was real. But deep down she knew it was more than that. She felt drawn to him in a way she could not explain, and it terrified her. When she arrived at the restaurant, a discreet, private space that whispered money and exclusivity, Damian was already there waiting. He stood as she approached, pulling out her chair himself. He wore a tailored black suit, his expression unreadable, but his eyes warmed just slightly when they met hers. They talked. At first it was awkward, Anna fumbling with her words, Damian watching her with quiet patience. But slowly something shifted. He asked about her studies, about her family, about her dreams. He listened, really listened, and when he spoke about his own life, his words were careful, measured, but honest. Anna learned that Damian had been raised in privilege, but had watched it all fall apart when his parents' marriage crumbled and their fortune was torn in half. He rebuilt his empire not from inheritance, but from sheer willpower. He trusted no one, relied on no one. He admitted this with a kind of detached acceptance, as if it was just the way things were. Anna left that dinner feeling both exhilarated and shaken. She knew she should walk away, that this was a game she was not equipped to play, but the next time Damien called, she answered, and the next, and the next. Anna's life began to split quietly into two worlds. By day, she was still the diligent student balancing classes and jobs, still the girl who walked through campus unnoticed, still the one who texted her roommate late at night about study sessions and deadlines. But by night she stepped into a space she never could have imagined before the world of Damien Carrington. It started with dinners, always private, always discreet. He picked places that shielded them from prying eyes where the waitstaff knew his name, but asked no questions. Anna was sure at first that these meetings were a passing interest, a curiosity he would lose quickly. But he kept calling. He kept inviting her, and each time she went, she found herself drawn deeper, not just into his world, but into the mystery of who he was beneath the sharp lines of control. Damien was unlike anyone Anna had ever known. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. He was meticulous in his habits, precise in his choices. And yet around her, there were moments when the mask slipped just slightly, when his gaze softened, or his mouth quirked in a way that suggested surprise at his own reactions. Anna caught herself wondering about the man behind the perfection. Why her? Why had he chosen to keep seeing her? She knew she was not like the women who usually surrounded him. She saw their photos sometimes in magazines or on gossip blogs. Models, actresses, socialites with flawless faces and effortless confidence. Anna was none of those things. She was plain in comparison, bookish, careful young in a way that felt painfully obvious. And yet Damien never seemed interested in comparisons. With her, he asked questions no one else had ever asked. What do you fear most? What do you want most? When was the last time you felt truly seen? The more time they spent together, the more the tension grew. Not just the attraction that buzzed under the surface, though that was undeniable, but something more dangerous, something more tender. Anna found herself wanting to touch him just to break the careful distance he always maintained. She noticed the way his hands stilled when they brushed hers by accident, the way his breath hitched almost imperceptibly when she leaned too close. But he never crossed the line. Not once. One night after a long dinner, they stood outside his car, the driver waiting discreetly nearby. Damien reached out as if to brush a loose strand of hair from Anna's face, but stopped just short, his fingers hovering near her cheek. His eyes darkened for a moment, and then he stepped back, hands at his sides. "Good night, Anna," he said softly, and the way he said her name made her chest ache. She could barely sleep that night, her body alive with the memory of a touch that had never landed. And then came the moment that cracked their careful rhythm. Anna had been invited to an event, a charity gala where Damien was one of the hosts. She almost said no. The idea of entering his glittering world so publicly filled her with panic. But he had asked her himself, and something in his voice made it impossible to refuse. She borrowed a gown from a friend, spent hours twisting her hair into place, and still felt woefully unprepared as she stepped into the grand hall where every surface gleamed and every guest sparkled. Damien found her near the entrance, his expression unreadable, but his eyes flickering with something sharp and possessive when they swept over her. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, and it was the first time she had heard him use the word, not in passing, not as a polite compliment, but as a truth. The night passed in a blur of introductions and polite conversation. Damien never left her side, his presence a shield against the curious glances and whispered speculation. Anna felt like she was walking through a dream, a dangerous, glittering dream that could vanish at any moment. And then it happened. At the end of the night, as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the city, Damien turned to her and said, "I should not be doing this." His voice was low, rougher than she had ever heard it. Anna's heart stuttered in her chest. "Doing what?" she whispered. "Wanting you this much." The confession hung between them, raw and trembling. Anna reached for his hand before she could think, before she could lose her nerve. Damien froze for a moment, as if startled by his own longing, and then very slowly he folded his fingers around hers. They stood there like that in the quiet, with only the city lights as witness. Neither spoke, but everything had changed. Over the next few weeks, the shift between them deepened. Damien began inviting her into his private spaces, not just the restaurants and events, but his home, his office, his life. Anna saw the loneliness woven into his routines, the late nights, the quiet meals, the endless work. She saw the way his staff treated him with a deference that bordered on fear, the way his phone never stopped buzzing, the way his shoulders never seemed to fully relax. She wanted to ease his burdens, even if only by sitting beside him as he worked, by bringing a moment of softness into his carefully controlled world. And yet Damien resisted the full surrender. There were moments when Anna felt him pull back, moments when she caught the flicker of old wounds behind his eyes. She learned about his past in fragments: a father who measured love in achievements, a mother who drifted away long before she actually left, a string of betrayals that had taught him trust was a weakness. Anna's heart ached for him, even as she struggled with her own insecurities. What if she was just another passing distraction? What if she was not enough to hold his attention? The turning point came unexpectedly one rainy evening when Anna showed up at his office unannounced. She had brought him dinner, a simple meal she had cooked herself, tired of imagining him eating alone at midnight. Damien looked up from his desk, surprised. Then something in his face softened in a way she had never seen before. He stood, walked over, and without a word pulled her into his arms. Anna froze, breath caught against his chest, but Damien only held her, his grip firm yet trembling, as if he was afraid she would disappear if he let go. "I do not want to be alone anymore," he whispered against her hair. Anna clung to him, not because she knew all the answers, not because she knew where this would lead, but because in that moment she believed they could find the answers together. Anna could not stop replaying the feeling of his arms around her, the quiet confession he had whispered, as if the words had been locked away for years. She knew that moment had changed something between them, but she also knew Damien was not a man who let his walls fall easily. In the days that followed, they spent more time together, but always within the safe boundaries he carefully maintained. They shared meals, long conversations, late nights, sitting close, but never crossing that invisible line, neither daring to name what they were building. Still, Anna felt the shift inside her, a tender ache of wanting more, mixed with the fear that if she pushed too hard, she might shatter the fragile trust they were weaving between them. Then came the night that peeled everything open. Damien invited Anna to his private estate for the weekend, a place he said few people had ever been. She arrived nervous, unsure of what to expect, and was struck by the contrast between his public world and this space. The estate was beautiful, but it was not cold or imposing. It was filled with small details: books, well-worn blankets, soft lighting, touches of a man who lived in solitude, but not without longing. They spent the day walking through the gardens, cooking dinner together, laughing more freely than they ever had before. Anna saw pieces of Damien that the world never glimpsed: the sharp wit, the quiet generosity, the way he relaxed when no one was watching. That night, as they sat by the fireplace, Anna leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time he let his fingers thread through her hair, his touch light but reverent. "You make me remember things I thought I buried," he said softly. Anna lifted her eyes to his, searching his face for the pain she sensed beneath the words. "What things?" she asked. Damien hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "I was not always like this," he murmured. "I used to believe in trust in love and promises. And then I learned what happens when you let people too close." Anna listened, heart aching, as he told her about the betrayal that had shaped him, the business partner, who had been like a brother, the one who stole not just money, but faith. She heard the grief in his voice, the wounds he rarely showed. Without thinking, she reached up, cupped his face gently in her hands. "I am not here to hurt you, Damien," she whispered. "I know," he said quietly, closing his eyes for a moment. "That is what scares me." For a long time, they sat there in silence, not needing to fill the space with words. And yet, as much as they were drawing closer, Anna sensed the weight Damien still carried, the burden of his past, the armor he wore so well. She wondered if he would ever truly let it fall. The test came sooner than either of them expected. One afternoon, while they were at the estate, a call came that pulled Damien back into the chaos of his business world. A crisis, a legal threat, a betrayal unfolding in real time. Anna watched as the man she had come to know slipped back into the ruthless CEO, the one who shut out everything human in order to survive. He left abruptly, instructing his staff to take care of her, promising he would return. But as the hours turned into days and the days into a week, Anna felt the sharp edge of uncertainty creeping in. When Damien finally called, she heard the exhaustion in his voice, but also the distance. "I am sorry," he said. "I need to fix this." Anna understood she really did, but the ache in her chest grew heavier with every passing moment. She tried to wait, tried to be patient, but eventually the doubt spilled over. She sent him a message, simple and raw. "Are we just pretending this matters?" Hours passed before he answered. "Meet me?" He said just that, nothing more. Anna's heart pounded as she arrived at his office late that night. The building was quiet, the city lights reflecting in the windows. She stepped inside and found Damien standing alone by the window, his posture tense, his eyes shadowed. When he turned to her, she saw something unguarded in his face. "I have built my life around control," he said softly, "around not needing anyone. You are the first thing that has ever made me want to break that." Anna stepped closer, her throat tight. "So why are you pushing me away?" Damien looked at her, and for a long moment he said nothing. Then very quietly he murmured, "Because if I let myself need you and you leave, it will destroy me." The confession broke something in both of them. Anna reached for him, trembling, and this time when he pulled her close, it was not careful or restrained. It was desperate, raw, aching. They held each other like two people who had been lost in the dark for too long. "I am not going anywhere," Anna whispered fiercely. "You might," Damien said, his voice rough. "People always do." "Not me," she promised, pressing her forehead to his. "I am right here." That night they sat together long into the early hours, sharing truths neither had dared speak before. Anna told him about her own fears, her insecurities, the deep sense of unworthiness she had carried for so long. Damien listened, his hands wrapped tightly around hers, as if anchoring them both. They did not pretend to have answers. They did not promise perfect love or easy days. But they promised something else, something even more precious. They promised to try. The weekend that followed was unlike anything Anna had experienced. Damien insisted she come back to the estate with him, not as a guest, not as an outsider, but as someone who belonged. She packed a small bag, unsure if she was ready but unable to resist. When she arrived, the atmosphere had changed. The staff greeted her warmly, as if they already knew her name. The house felt more alive, and Damien was waiting by the door, his expression soft but determined. "I want you here," he said simply. That night something shifted forever. Dinner was quiet, just the two of them sitting by the fireplace, with candles flickering and soft music playing in the background. Anna watched Damien carefully, noticing how his shoulders relaxed when he was with her, how the hard edge of his voice softened when he spoke to her. They laughed over a spilled glass of wine, their hands brushed as they reached for the same dish, and when their eyes met across the table, the air felt thick with unspoken truths. Afterward, they moved to the living room, sitting close on the couch. Damien turned to her, his gaze intense, his fingers brushing a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. Anna's breath caught as he traced the edge of her jaw, his touch light but reverent. "I have wanted to do this for a long time," he murmured. Anna's heart pounded as she leaned into his touch, her own hand reaching up to cover his. They stayed like that for a long moment, suspended in a delicate balance of longing and restraint. When he finally kissed her, it was slow and careful, as if he was memorizing every detail of the moment. His lips were warm, his hands gentle as they framed her face. Anna melted into the kiss, feeling the world narrow to just the two of them. Damien pulled back slightly, his forehead resting against hers, his breath uneven. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice a whisper. Anna smiled, trembling but certain. "I have never been more sure of anything." They moved together cautiously, carefully, as if navigating sacred ground. Damien lifted her into his arms, carrying her upstairs to his bedroom. There was no rush, no urgency, just the quiet, tender unfolding of two hearts learning to trust. Anna marveled at how gentle he was, how attentive, as if every touch was a vow, every kiss a promise. For the first time she felt truly seen, not just desired, not just admired, but cherished. Later, wrapped in each other's arms, Anna lay against Damien's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. He ran his fingers through her hair, pressing soft kisses to her forehead. "I never thought I would find this," he admitted quietly. "Neither did I," Anna whispered. They fell asleep, like that, wrapped in warmth and quiet, and something that felt dangerously close to love. The next morning, Damien surprised her by making breakfast himself, simple but thoughtful. They ate together, laughing at his clumsy attempts at cooking, and Anna felt a sense of normalcy she had never imagined possible with someone like him. For the first time, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real. But life has a way of testing fragile beginnings. That afternoon, while Anna was sketching in the sunlit sitting room, she overheard Damien on the phone, his voice low and tense. She could not make out all the words, but she caught enough to understand that something was wrong, very wrong. When Damien joined her, his expression was tight, controlled, but she saw the flicker of worry in his eyes. "We need to talk," he said softly. He told her everything, about the company crisis, the financial threats, the betrayals unfolding behind the scenes, about how his enemies were circling and how the people around him were questioning his judgment, including his connection with her. Anna felt the blood drain from her face. "They think I am a liability," she whispered. Damien reached for her hands, gripping them tightly. "You are not," he said fiercely. "But they will try to make you feel that way?" For the first time, Anna understood the full weight of Damien's world. The endless scrutiny, the sharp claws of power, the loneliness that came with standing at the top. She realized that loving him meant stepping into that storm, into a life where every choice carried a cost. She trembled as she faced him. "What do we do?" Damien's jaw tightened. "We stand together," he said simply, "if you are willing." Anna searched his face, feeling the ache of fear and love twist together in her chest. "I am scared," she admitted. "Me too," he said, "but I do not want to let go." "Neither do I," Anna whispered. That night they faced the storm side by side. Damien stood firm in his business, refusing to let outside voices tear them apart. Anna found her own quiet strength, refusing to hide or apologize for their love. They leaned on each other, holding tight even as the pressure mounted. It was not easy. There were moments when Anna wanted to run, when Damien almost retreated into old patterns of isolation. But each time they pulled each other back, each time they chose to fight for what they had. And when the crisis finally began to settle, when the rumors faded and the fires were slowly put out, they were still standing, still holding hands, still looking into each other's eyes with a depth that only comes from surviving something together. The days after the storm should have been peaceful, but for Anna, they were filled with an ache she couldn't explain. She loved Damien, she knew that now, but loving him came with a weight she hadn't anticipated. The looks from people around them, the whispers, the constant feeling that she didn't belong in his world, it gnawed at her. Damien tried to reassure her. He brought her to meetings, introduced her proudly, kissed her forehead in public like a silent vow. But Anna couldn't quiet the voice in her head whispering, "You're still just the girl who lost a bet and ended up in his world by accident." One evening, as they sat together on the balcony overlooking the city, Anna finally voiced what she had been carrying. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to stand here," she confessed, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I can keep feeling like I'm holding you back." Damien turned sharply, his eyes filled with something fierce and wounded. "You are not holding me back, Anna. You are the only thing keeping me standing." She shook her head, tears gathering. "But I'm just me. You deserve someone who knows how to handle this, someone who isn't overwhelmed by it all." Damien cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing her tears. "You think I fell in love with you because you know how to navigate my world?" he asked softly. "I fell in love with you because you remind me what's real, because when I look at you, I remember I'm not just a title or a company or a bank account. I'm a man, and you're the only person who sees that." Anna let the words sink into her chest, warming the cold places. But even so, the pressure didn't disappear. The real twist came not from the media, not from his business, but from something neither of them had seen coming. One morning, Anna's younger sister called in a panic. Their mother, who had been quietly struggling with health issues back home, had taken a turn for the worse. Without hesitation, Anna packed a bag. "I have to go home," she told Damien, her voice steady but her heart breaking. He reached for her, his grip tight. "I'll come with you." But Anna shook her head. "No," she said softly. "This is something I need to do on my own." Damien stared at her, a flicker of panic crossing his features. "You're coming back, right?" Anna gave him a sad smile. "I want to, Damien. But I need to remember who I am without all of this. Please let me go. Please trust me." Reluctantly, Damien let her leave. The weeks apart were harder than either of them expected. Anna slipped back into her old world, caring for her mother, supporting her sister, grounding herself in the simple things she had left behind. And while part of her longed for Damien, she knew she needed this time to find her footing again. She needed to prove to herself that she wasn't just the girl swept up in a fairy tale. She was still Anna, resilient, determined, whole. Meanwhile, Damien threw himself into work, but nothing filled the space Anna had left behind. His penthouse felt colder, his days longer, his victories hollow. He found himself reaching for his phone, staring at photos of her, tracing the edges of her handwriting on a note she had once left him. He wanted to call, to demand she come back, but he remembered her words, "Please, trust me." And so he waited. Days turned into weeks, and still he waited. Then one evening, just as the sun was setting over the city, Damien made a decision. He left his office, got into his car, and drove. Not to her apartment, not to her family's home, but to the small local art gallery Anna had once mentioned, the one where she had dreamed of showing her sketches. He stood quietly in the corner as he watched her across the room, her hair pulled back, her hands moving gracefully, as she explained her work to a small crowd. She looked radiant, alive, completely herself. Damien's heart twisted sharply in his chest. When the event ended, Anna turned and froze when she saw him. "Damien," she breathed, her eyes wide. He stepped forward, his voice raw. "I didn't come here to pull you back. I came here to tell you I love you exactly like this, not as part of my world, but as yourself." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know if you'd wait," she whispered. "I didn't know if I deserved you to." Damien closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face. "You were never the one who had to prove anything, Anna. It was me. I had to prove I could love without control, without conditions, without fear." As they stood there, in the quiet space between past and future, Anna realized that what they had survived wasn't the media, or the gossip, or the business pressures. It was themselves, their own fears, their own doubts, their own histories, and in facing those things, they had found something unshakable. Damien leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. "Come home with me, Anna. Not because I need to protect you, not because you need to fit into my world, but because I don't want to imagine my world without you." Anna smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was never really gone, Damien. I just needed to remember that I belonged." He kissed her then, not as a billionaire claiming his prize, not as a man trying to fix his loneliness, but as someone who had finally learned what it meant to love fully, honestly, without apology. The weeks after Anna returned to Damien's side unfolded like a quiet symphony. There were no dramatic headlines, no flashy announcements, no sweeping declarations to the world. Instead, there were simple mornings where Anna woke up tangled in Damien's arms, sunlight streaming through the window as they lay in the hush of early day. There were soft conversations over coffee, where they spoke about hopes, fears, and plans not just for the next quarter or the next gallery show, but for the life they wanted to build together. Damien still ran his empire, but Anna saw the subtle changes. He no longer stayed in the office until midnight every night. He no longer checked his phone at dinner. He no longer wore the constant armor of a man trying to outpace his loneliness. And Anna, once so unsure of her place, now stood steady beside him, not as a shadow or an ornament or a distraction, but as a partner. She sold her first full collection of sketches, and Damien was there in the front row, clapping the loudest. She spoke on a local radio show about reclaiming confidence after years of self-doubt, and Damien sent her flowers with a note that simply read, "You've always been enough." On the 6-month anniversary of the night everything began, Damien took Anna back to the place where their story had first twisted into existence, the private pool, the one where she had lost that bet, the one where a dare had thrown them into a world neither of them had been prepared for. Standing by the water, Anna laughed softly, shaking her head. "I can't believe this all started because of something so ridiculous." Damien smiled, sliding his arms around her waist. "It didn't start because of the bet, Anna. It started because you were brave enough to jump, brave enough to risk something, brave enough to let me see you." Anna turned in his arms, looking up at him, her heart swelling with a quiet, steady love that had nothing to do with accidents or dares, or the glittering world they had fought their way through. "You were the one who saw me, Damien. You were the one who made me believe I could belong." He kissed her then, slow and sure, as if they had all the time in the world, as if they were finally exactly where they were always meant to be. In the end, the story they carried wasn't about a naked swim or a billionaire's gaze or even the whirlwind that had followed. It was about two people who had learned that love was not about perfection or performance. It was about choosing each other in the quiet moments, in the hard moments, in the moments where it would have been easier to walk away. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the pool in gold and shadow, Anna whispered the words that had been sitting in her chest for months. "Thank you for waiting for me." Damien smiled, resting his forehead against hers. "Thank you for making the wait worth it." And as they stood there, arms wrapped around each other, hearts steady and sure, they both knew the truth. Some love stories aren't about grand beginnings or flawless endings. They're about the courage to stay when everything tells you to run, and that, more than anything, was the story they would carry forward, together.